Chapter 14, Public Opinion. Good afternoon, everyone. Today we take a deeper dive into public opinion, which we introduced earlier, but now explore in greater detail. If democracy is government of the people, by the people, for the people, then public opinion is its foundation. But what exactly is public opinion? How is it formed? And how much power does it really have over policymaking? Defining public opinion. Public opinion is the collection of attitudes, values, and beliefs held by ordinary citizens about leaders, institutions, policies, and issues. It is dynamic, shifting with events, generational changes, and cultural trends. Importantly, it is not always consistent. Americans may want lower taxes, but also more government programs. They may distrust politicians, but still re-elect their representatives. Understanding these contradictions is key to studying public opinion. Measuring public opinion. Because public opinion plays such a central role in democracy, political scientists and policymakers devote significant effort to measuring what people think. The most common tool is the public opinion poll, which, when done carefully, provides valuable insights into citizens' attitudes on politics, policy, and leaders. Yet polling is as much an art as a science, full of methodological challenges that can influence results. 1. Scientific polling and random sampling. At the heart of reliable polling is random sampling, which ensures that every individual in the population has an equal chance of being selected. A well-drawn random sample allows researchers to generalize from a relatively small group, usually 1,000 to 1,500 respondents, to the entire U.S. population. To reflect uncertainty, pollsters report a margin of error, for example, plus 3 percentage points, indicating the range within which the true value likely falls. 2. Challenges in poll design and administration. Even scientifically designed polls face obstacles. Question wording. Small changes in phrasing can dramatically alter responses. For example, asking if people support government assistance to the poor may receive higher approval than support welfare. Question order. Earlier questions can prime respondents, shaping how they interpret later ones. For instance, asking about terrorism before asking about immigration may influence responses to the second question. Timing. Public opinion is fluid. A poll conducted right after a major event, such as a Supreme Court ruling or a terrorist attack, may look very different from one taken a week later. Non-response bias. When certain groups, young people, minorities, rural voters, are less likely to participate, their views may be underrepresented, skewing the results. 3. Modern challenges to polling. In recent decades, polling has faced additional hurdles. Low response rates. Decades ago, most people answered pollsters' phone calls. Today, only a small fraction do. Cell phone habits. Because younger voters rely heavily on cell phones, pollsters must adjust their methods to avoid overrepresenting older landline users. Online surveys. Internet-based polls can reach broad audiences but raise concerns about whether the sample truly represents the population, since not everyone has equal access or inclination to participate. 4. Reliability and interpretation. While polls are indispensable tools, they must be interpreted cautiously. A single poll provides only a snapshot, and outliers are common. Analysts often rely on aggregated polling averages, like those from 538 or Real Clear Politics, to smooth out irregularities. Despite their flaws, polls remain one of the best ways to track public opinion, helping campaigns craft strategies, journalists frame stories, and governments respond to citizens' concerns. Political socialization. Public opinion is not formed in a vacuum. Instead, people develop their political views over time through a process called political socialization, the lifelong shaping of attitudes, values, and beliefs about government and society. This process begins in childhood and continues throughout adulthood, influenced by both personal relationships and broader social forces. 1. Family is often the most powerful and enduring influence, especially in early life. Children absorb political cues from parents, whether through explicit conversations about politics or the more subtle shaping of values such as trust in authority, patriotism, or attitudes toward diversity. While not all children grow up to share their parents' party identification, family influence provides the foundation on which later experiences build. 2. Education. Schools play a crucial role by teaching civic knowledge, how government works, the meaning of the Constitution, and the responsibilities of citizenship. Beyond textbooks, education also reinforces democratic values like tolerance, participation, and equality. College often broadens political horizons further, exposing students to diverse perspectives and encouraging critical thinking about social issues. 3. Peers and social networks. As individuals move into adolescence and adulthood, peers become an important source of political identity. Friends, co-workers, and social groups can reinforce or challenge existing beliefs. In the digital age, social networks, both online and offline, create powerful echo chambers where people may be surrounded by like-minded voices, intensifying polarization or, in some cases, opening exposure to alternative views. 4. Religion and culture. Religious traditions and cultural norms strongly influence moral and ethical worldviews. For example, churches, synagogues, mosques, and temples often provide not only spiritual guidance but also cues about social and political issues. Cultural identity, whether tied to ethnicity, language, or heritage, also frames how people view authority, justice, and community responsibilities. 5. Media. The media shapes how people see the political world by framing issues, highlighting some topics while downplaying others. Traditional media outlets, newspapers, television, radio, once dominated this role. Today, digital platforms and social media have fragmented the landscape, exposing people to a wider range of perspectives, but also to misinformation and partisan narratives that reinforce pre-existing views. 6. Major historical events. Finally, generation-shaping events leave lasting imprints on public opinion. The Great Depression fostered support for government intervention in the economy. World War II reinforced patriotism and collective sacrifice. The Vietnam War and Watergate bred skepticism toward government authority. More recently, the 9/11 terrorist attacks reshaped views on security and civil liberties, while the COVID-19 pandemic highlighted debates about science, public health, and government responsibility. The lifelong process. Political socialization is continuous. While early influences may be the strongest, attitudes evolve as individuals encounter new experiences, communities, and challenges. Together, these influences explain why citizens hold diverse political views and why generational differences in politics persist. The role of media and elites. Public opinion is shaped not only by the everyday experiences of citizens, but also from the top down, by political elites and the media. Together, these actors influence what issues are on the public's radar, how those issues are understood, and how leaders are evaluated. 1. Media's influence. The media plays a central role in connecting the public to politics, not just by reporting facts, but by shaping perceptions through 3 key processes. Agenda setting. The media doesn't tell people what to think, but it tells them what to think about. For example, during an election cycle, if the news focuses heavily on immigration or inflation, those issues become more salient in the minds of voters, even if other topics like healthcare or foreign policy matter just as much. Framing. Beyond choosing the topic, the media influences how people understand it. A news story on climate change framed as a scientific crisis may lead to calls for government action, while the same issue framed as an economic burden may foster resistance. Framing shapes whether citizens see a problem as urgent, solvable, or even real. Priming. Media coverage can also affect the standards people use to judge leaders. If news outlets focus on foreign policy, citizens may evaluate a president primarily on international affairs. If coverage emphasizes the economy, voters may judge based on jobs and inflation. 2. The role of political elites. Political elites, presidents, party leaders, elected officials, and activists also guide public opinion by shaping the national conversation. Their speeches, policies, and media appearances define what is politically important. For instance, Franklin Roosevelt used radio fireside chats to build support for the New Deal. Ronald Reagan earned the title Great Communicator for his ability to frame conservative policies in appealing terms. Modern presidents use social media platforms like Twitter, X, to bypass traditional outlets and speak directly to the public. Activists and party leaders also influence debate by mobilizing supporters, framing issues in partisan terms, and setting the ideological tone of their movements. 3. Interplay between media and elites. Media and elites often work together, sometimes intentionally, sometimes not. Politicians seek favorable coverage to amplify their messages, while media outlets highlight elite conflict and drama to attract audiences. The result is a feedback loop. Elites set talking points, media amplifies them, and the public absorbs them, shaping the broader climate of opinion. 4. The broader impact. This top-down influence highlights that public opinion is not purely grassroots. Citizens interpret issues through the lenses provided by elites and the media. This dynamic can both inform the public and distort democratic debate, depending on whether coverage emphasizes facts, sensationalism, or partisan spin. Public opinion and policy. A central question in political science is whether government follows public opinion, or whether leaders act independently of it. The relationship is complex, and it often depends on the strength, clarity, and persistence of citizens' views. 1. When public opinion drives policy. When opinion is strong, unified, and sustained over time, policymakers usually respond. For example, overwhelming public support for civil rights in the 1960s pressured leaders to pass the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Similarly, widespread opposition to the Vietnam War by the late 1960s and early 1970s influenced decisions to wind down U.S. involvement. In these cases, ignoring public sentiment carried heavy political costs. 2. When policymakers have flexibility, by contrast, when public opinion is divided, inconsistent, or weakly held, leaders enjoy more room to maneuver. On complex issues like tax policy, healthcare reform, or environmental regulation, citizens may lack detailed knowledge, and their views may shift with changing circumstances. Policymakers can then rely on their own judgment, party platforms, or elite cues to make decisions without immediate backlash. 3. When leaders act first. Sometimes leaders act ahead of public opinion and then work to shape it afterward. Foreign wars often fit this pattern. For instance, the Iraq War in 2003 initially had strong support, but much of that support reflected the Bush administration's framing of the conflict. Similarly, major reforms such as Social Security in the 1930s or the Affordable Care Act in 2010 were initially controversial but gained broader acceptance over time. These examples show how elites can mold opinion through framing, agenda setting, and leadership. 4. Whose opinion matters most? Research suggests that elites, interest groups, and wealthy individuals often exert more direct influence on policy than average citizens. A well-known 2014 study by political scientists Martin Gilens and Benjamin Page concluded that the preferences of ordinary Americans have relatively little independent effect on policy outcomes compared to those of organized groups and economic elites. Still, public opinion matters in setting the boundaries of what is politically possible. Leaders rarely pursue policies that are deeply unpopular across the electorate, since doing so risks electoral punishment. 5. The dynamic relationship. Ultimately, the relationship between opinion and policy is interactive rather than one-directional. Sometimes public opinion drives change, sometimes leaders shape opinion, and often the two interact in a feedback loop. What remains clear is that in a democracy, public opinion provides both pressure and limits. It constrains policymakers, guides political agendas, and legitimizes government actions in the eyes of the people. Challenges of public opinion today. In theory, public opinion should reflect the collective voice of citizens in a democracy, but in practice, the forces shaping opinion today face significant challenges that complicate whether public attitudes truly represent informed democratic choice. 1. Polarization. One of the most pressing challenges is growing partisan polarization. Americans are increasingly divided into ideological camps, with liberals and conservatives clustering around opposite ends of the spectrum. This polarization makes compromise more difficult and fuels hostility toward the other side. Issues like climate change, gun rights, and even public health measures have become markers of partisan identity rather than topics for pragmatic debate. Polarization not only divides policymakers, but also trickles down into families, communities, and workplaces, where political disagreement can erode social trust. 2. Misinformation and disinformation. The rise of digital media has accelerated the spread of misinformation, inaccurate information shared without intent to deceive, and disinformation, false information deliberately spread to mislead. Social media platforms amplify rumors and conspiracy theories often faster than fact-checkers can respond. From election fraud claims to vaccine skepticism, misinformation distorts public understanding and undermines rational decision-making. Citizens may feel informed but base their views on faulty premises. 3. Declining trust in institutions. Trust in core institutions, government, media, science, even the courts, has steadily eroded. This decline makes it harder for leaders to build consensus or for experts to persuade the public on urgent issues. For example, during the COVID-19 pandemic, conflicting messages from government officials and partisan media deepened skepticism about scientific guidance. Without trust, even well-supported policies struggle to gain legitimacy. 4. Fragmentation of media consumption. Whereas past generations received news from a few common sources, today's Americans inhabit fragmented media environments. Cable television, talk radio, podcasts, and online platforms create partisan echo chambers, where citizens hear only what reinforces their pre-existing beliefs. This fragmentation means Americans are not just divided by ideology, but often by facts themselves, living in parallel realities shaped by their chosen news sources. 5. Implications for democracy. Together, these challenges raise concerns about the quality of democratic decision-making. If polarization hardens identities, misinformation clouds understanding, trust declines, and media consumption fragments reality, then public opinion may be less a reflection of informed citizens and more a product of manipulation and division. This environment complicates the ability of government to respond effectively to the will of the people and threatens the foundations of democratic accountability. Conclusion. Public opinion is the pulse of democracy, but it is not always stable, consistent, or rational. It is shaped by socialization, influenced by elites and media, and filtered through institutions. While it does not always dictate policy, it sets the stage for what is politically possible and legitimate. As you reflect, consider this question. Should leaders always follow public opinion, even when it is uninformed or divided? Or should they lead even against majority sentiment if they believe it is in the nation's long-term interest? Next time, in Chapter 15, we will move to elections and campaigns where public opinion is tested directly at the ballot box.